If you don't have a plan,
you become part of somebody else's plan.
what does that mean?
So this is a phenomenal quote that I love. And actually, Josh, Alex, I was sharing with you guys with my son. I want him to know this. And by the way, for anybody listening, it's important that you also know this. If you do not have a plan, you do become part of somebody else's plan. And that is true for your brand, your personal brand, your company's brand. And the stat is very surprising. And that's only 23% of healthcare marketers actually have their content documented inside of a plan. And so what that means is the other 77% are becoming part of somebody else's plan. So the opportunity in this is that if you do put your plan together, there's an opportunity for you to have a competitive advantage. And so that's what I love about that is that you have the control.
Hi everyone, this is Joshua Hoffman and Alex Gerashenko, and welcome to another episode of the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast, where we deconstruct the why and how agency owners found their success and learn a little bit more about how they help their clients. Today I have Saul Marquez, the founder and CEO of Outcomes Rocket, a B2B full-service healthcare marketing agency that helps leaders and companies grow. Welcome, Saul.
Thank you so much, Josh and Alex. Good to be here.
Where I want to start is one of my personal favorite topics, philosophy, because the last time we spoke, you mentioned Aristotelian's appeals of persuasion. So
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit what that is and how it relates to business?
100%. Look, the Aristotelian appeals of persuasion are ethos, pathos, logos. So ethos is credibility or trust. Logos is logic or proof. And pathos is emotion. And, when you think about these things, we always talk about marketing as it's very simply 4 pillars. 4 pillars starts with strategy. Then you got earned, paid, and you've got earned, paid, and dude, I don't know what the hell is going on with me today.
I have it for you. Insights.
Dude, it's earned, paid, and owned. Earned, paid, and owned. Let me do that part again. I swear.
It's the coming off of the client call. It's just like
Yeah.
And I also it doesn't help that I woke up at 2:30 in the morning today. So that's kind of one of those days today. Yeah.
problem with
All
kids.
right. You know what? No, man, just a lot going on, like a lot of good stuff going on, and just you wake up and you're just like. You want to get
Your
started?
mind's just racing.
Yeah, man, that's how I've been, and so it's. I promise you this will be the last time. Yeah, so it's ethos, pathos, logos. Ethos is credibility or trust. Logos is logic. Pathos is emotions, and those things really pair well with the 4 pillars of marketing, which starts with strategy. You got owned, earned, and paid. And so, they mesh in well, and all these things are really so simple. And if people try to complicate it, I always say they're trying to sell you something.
Oh, interesting. I like that. And we're going to get into a few more of your little quotes things in a second. But,
Okay.
And before we get into the business stuff, I want to stay on this, self-help philosophy topic because I think it's important to kind of understand the person behind the business. Okay, so if you don't have a plan,
you become part of somebody else's plan.
What does that
mean? So this is a phenomenal quote that I love. And actually, Josh, Alex, I was sharing with you guys with my son, I want him to know this. And by the way, for anybody listening, it's important that you also know this. If you do not have a plan, you do become part of somebody else's plan. And that is true for your brand, your personal brand, your company's brand. And the stat is very surprising. And that's only 23% of healthcare marketers actually have their content documented inside of a plan. And so what that means is the other 77% are becoming part of somebody else's plan. So the opportunity in this is that if you do put your plan together, there's an opportunity for you to have a competitive advantage. And so that's what I love about that, is that you have the control, you have the opportunity to do something about your brand and your business.
You're good at turning my philosophy self-help questions into business. Like usually I'm like, no, let's just talk about like you and everything. I'm like, it's good that you're bringing it back to business.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like the origin story here, right? Like you initially were not in a communications focus. How did you get to that?
Yeah, so I started off, I started as communications, and then eventually got into the classical humanities. Is that what you're talking about, or
Yeah, exactly.
you're referring to? Yeah, so I've always had a pleasure for how the human word can create emotion, how the human word can create action. And communication was the thing that I wanted to do, but I sort of went on this backpacking trip to Europe, and I ended up in Greece. I don't know if I told you guys, we were going to go to Greece for 2 days. We ended up staying for like 2 weeks, and I almost quit school and got a job at this awesome hotel at Corfu Island. It was the best. Like, had so much fun. George, the owner of the hotel, wanted my friend and I to stay there because we had a good time, and we knew how to, help others have a good time. Let's say that. And so I remember being at the Acropolis on the way back when I decided to come back home and continue college. And I remember being in Athens, seeing all of these amazing structures, the Parthenon and all of these. I couldn't read it. It was Greek to me. So I came back and I wanted to learn. And you know what? I learned in one of those classes, the Aristotelian appeals of persuasion. And I said, I'm going to go this route. So I started studying Seneca. I started studying Cicero. I started studying Aristotle. And I can tell you that I was so stimulated. It was a really geeky way to get to the same end. And now I really feel like it's become a central part of really who I am as a person. And it meshes like humanity. It's called classical humanities. And in the end, it doesn't matter what business you're in. You're in the people business. So if you could connect with people, if you could help people get wins, then you get closer to being successful.
I have a thought there. I feel like now everything's moving so fast paced. We're so interconnected, and everyone talks about like data-driven decisions or whatever other thing you want to throw at it. During that time, we didn't have as many distractions, right? So people really thought deeply without kind of like the data analysis to say like, oh, this is why. They actually just thought kind of introspectively, which is, I think, connecting to that and understanding like the root origins of how people communicate, why they do certain things is really helpful. And I think given that you study that, gives you this kind of foundational base to then put everything on top of, which is really powerful.
Yeah, no, I feel that way too, man. It is. What did you guys study?
Josh?
I was marketing major. My quick story on the philosophy, since we're continuing to tap in, is I knew when I was in college that I really loved philosophy, but rather than like starting to study it, I kind of just started writing and kind of wrote my own thoughts. And what ended up happening is a lot of that stuff that I was writing and thinking about was Stoicism. And when I started reading Stoicism, which you mentioned Seneca, that's when I was like, wait, this is like all the thoughts that I've been having. And to have like this, yes, it's this real thing. And like, yes, you're on the right path of thinking. It was really nice to kind of like back into philosophy. So that's where my kind of love for philosophy, but I studied marketing and I'm now in marketing for the first time in my career. So finally
that's
using
awesome. That's great.
Nice.
What about you, Alex?
I went to school undecided without admitting to myself that I was undecided. So naturally I went for business administration.
Yep.
And I I transitioned to a marketing degree, but while I was doing that, I found myself taking a lot of economics courses. So I ended up getting a minor in econ just because that's where my interest was. But halfway through school, I started Doodle as a startup, and so that kind of it worked within the marketing realm. So it was it's transitioned a lot since I started. It's a completely different concept than when I first started. But yeah, marketing, and then it was cool working on an idea around that, actually implementing something of my own while learning about it. My last year of school, I actually absorbed a lot of information from my classes because I was putting it to action. So that was super valuable.
Yeah,
That's cool, man.
Yeah, I did the same where I started my company. Well, I started the concepts or the idea of the company, and I used that for like my entrepreneurial classes. And it just made me, I was a bad student. So it made me like tune in a little bit more because I had this like purpose behind it. So
we had one quick story. We had, so I went to Temple, and my junior year there, they had built a brand new business school. They built this huge 10-story, not that big, but it's in the city. So 10-story building specifically for business. And they outfitted it with like amazing boardrooms and breakout rooms, and no one was using it. Only the MBA students were like there some of the time. So we had all of our team meetings in this like glorious boardroom with whiteboards everywhere and like screencasting and video. I remember we went on with a company that we were trying to get as a client. And we did a virtual meeting, and we're in this massive boardroom that's like gorgeous. And they're like, wow, like your offices are amazing. And we were just like, yeah, we didn't even tell them that we were in school. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
That's okay. And then the last at least direct business topic that I want to touch on is the idea of having and understanding your primary question, because you mentioned that last time, and I really like that, and I just wanted to put it on a recording. So can you share a little bit more about what that is and what it means?
Yeah, I am so glad we had the just the opportunity to talk before doing this, because you guys, like, after our conversation. So let me hit your question. So everybody has a primary question, and if you think about it, if you go into a silent room, there's a question that you consistently ask yourself. It's different for all of us. For me, I found out I did this Tony Robbins event, and it was like a 6-day event. It's called Date with Destiny, and you're forced to kind of look within yourself. I found out my question was, how can I make this happen? That question sort of stayed with me, and it was sort of a driving force for me in finding a way. I then realized that it came from a time in my youth when, my parents had separated, and my mom was working 3 jobs. It was hard, it was hard. And my brother and I, 2 years apart, we had a lot of time for ourselves and figuring out, how are we going to make this happen? How are we going to make this happen? Mom's working 3 jobs. So that stayed with me, and that helped me become very self-sufficient, and it helped me understand the importance of results. Not just doing things because you said you're going to do it or because it took you 10 hours, but because there's an end result that needs to happen here. And so that stayed with me as I sort of, back to what I was saying at the beginning of this, guys, is I left our conversation earlier and I realized that my question had actually evolved. My question evolved, and I had a wake-up call after our call. And my question, my question is that I departed from that. When I left my corporate job and I became an entrepreneur, I shed a lot of layers, because when you're at a corporation, I climbed up the ladder. I was an executive at a medical device company. There's so many resources. Then you can become an entrepreneur. You got to make it happen somehow, right? It shifted from how can I make it happen to who do I need to include that will help me make this happen. So the question shifted from how to who. And I realize now that that small little shift takes away me having to be the expert at everything. And I don't hesitate to hire the best. I'm willing to invest in the business and myself, whatever it takes, in the right people on my team, right? There's 20 of us now on the team, like, in order to make it happen. So it's not how can I make it happen, is who can join us in order to make it happen. And so I want to thank you guys for helping me think about that, because I honestly hadn't thought about that primary question intentionally in a while, and you guys brought it back up. So thank you.
We'll send you a bill for our not consulting, but like therapy. Our therapy.
Yeah. You guys are my shrinks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, that's pretty much what half of this podcast is: meeting with other business owners and going through some therapy. Yeah. Real quick question. Who's older, you or your brother?
I'm older. Yeah.
Okay,
1 year and 10 months. 1 year and 10 months. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. It seems like, were you the one that kind of was a driving force, and maybe the who was naturally there in your brother as a resource?
Possibly. Yeah. It could be, for sure.
That was,
but I'm telling you, man, like we're digging deep on this episode. We're digging deep. But I will say, like, we the cool thing about my brother is that, like, I mean, gosh, he's just so smart and has always been able to show me different things. So we're so different, and it's so interesting, right? Like, I mean, I only have one kid, but I understand, siblings could be so different. And like, we've learned how to complement each other in a way that has really lifted both of us. So he's one of my best friends, and we really go farther together. So I would say it goes both ways. Like, we're who's for each other,
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Yeah. I think everyone that kind of makes it, they come at least when you're listening to other podcasts and stuff, it's you can't do it by yourself. You have to have, whether it's a team or whatever it is. Yes, siblings are definitely different. My sister and I aren't totally different, but she likes, I call them white box houses, like with white squares, like that they all look the same. Where I want to live like in the middle of the woods in a log cabin that is like so yeah. Even though we both moved to Denver, we're pretty different. All right, so now I'd like to learn a little bit more about the marketing firm, Outcomes Rocket. Because a lot of our goal with the podcast is to highlight your business and kind of what you do and get you attention. So can you kind of start off just by telling us a little bit more about the business?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, very simply, I've been in healthcare for almost 20 years, and having been in the business wearing sales and marketing hats, I've found some successful motions, actions, strategies that really can scale. I went from doing this for one company as an employee and then an executive to applying what we know how to do very well to many companies. And so we work with healthcare organizations and leaders, and our job is to help them increase awareness in the market as well as accelerate growth. And we do it through full service marketing. So, we are sort of the agency that comes in to help with commercial execution.
Specifically in healthcare.
Specifically in healthcare. Yep. So our clients are health technology companies, medical device companies, pharmaceutical companies, all that their end clients are either large insurance companies or healthcare systems and healthcare system executives. So our clients think of them as the vendors that sell to healthcare. Q4 of last year, I did a podcast, and it was a sort of like a provider audience, and I guess they liked what I said. So we started getting calls from provider offices. So Q4 of last year, we started serving some of the provider space. So provider meaning the doctors, right? The doctors that have practices and they have patients. So that's been kind of fun. It's sort of changed things up for us. Mostly we're B2B, but working with providers, we're definitely doing B2B, but also much of what they need is business to consumer. So that's been a really nice shift, and it's sort of diversified who we help in the market.
And to kind of double click on that, now we know kind of who you work with, and you kind of tapped into what services you provide, but can you kind of go into, what specific services you guys provide?
Yeah, look, what I will say to that question, Josh, is, marketing is all tactics. And the reality is tactics are the noise you hear before the war is lost. And that's from The Art of War. And so it's very easy to get tactical in marketing because that's a lot of what you have. So the thing that I really want to urge our listeners to do is to not forget that marketing has 4 pillars. And we were talking about this, kind of bringing it back from the start of the show to now. All those tactics are preceded with the strategy pillar. So you start with strategy. Once you have your strategy put together, you now can employ the owned, earned, and paid verticals of marketing. And so we're able to help our customers in any one of those verticals. But where we start is the strategy. And under strategy, you have some very simple things. Your brand house, which consists of your brand purpose, your brand differentiator, your brand attributes. Then from your brand house, you go down one level and you identify your ideal client personas, your ICPs. You clearly outline their pain points. You clearly outline their goals, common objections to why they wouldn't want to work with you. And so that becomes another element of your strategy. Right below that becomes your messaging architecture. Your messaging architecture is the messaging that you use to address the different problems that your ideal client persona is on in their buyer journey with your organization. So you're either educating on a problem because they don't necessarily know that they have this problem, so you need to educate them. Maybe they already know they have the problem and they're trying to figure out what exactly to do about it. And so there you start educating on your solutions, your services, and your products. But maybe they're already considering you, so you start educating and helping people choose you. So what we do is get the strategy in place, and then owned. We could talk about owned marketing. That's essentially owned is everything that you own, like your website. So like, Alex, the stuff that you do, man, you're helping people like with their owned all day, right? Getting people to get on that website, properly make decisions. The Aristotelian appeals, right? Like if you're like your formula hits the Aristotelian appeals for people's websites.
I think that's
all.
I brought it up. Yeah. When we were talking about that.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So anyway, and then so that's owned. Socials, SEO, all that's owned. Earned goes to the credibility and trust, and the earned is all about OPS, other people's stages. So you got your own stages, then you go on OPSs. Now the beauty of OPS is that all you have to do is show up and add massive value. The people that host you, so Josh and Alex, you guys are hosting me on your stage, and I'm grateful for it. And anytime I get an opportunity to show up on someone's stage, my intention is to add massive value. And so you show up, you add massive value. There's publications, there's media, that's other forms of earned. Very little people think about user-generated content. So like UGC is essentially like if you put a social post out there and unsolicited, somebody says, wow, like Alex and Josh did a bang up job on my website. Like I'm getting conversions like never before. Like you could pull that because that is earned, right? You didn't ask for it. It's an earned testimonial, and it's about putting it in the right places. And then there's paid. Once you got everything in order, your conversion optimization's in place. You know your cost of acquisition. You're targeting the right ACVs, your annual contract values. You got everything in order. You know your conversion rates. Now you could start spending money for traffic on paid. And paid could be in the form of social media ads. It could be in form of programmatic ads. Going to a conference is another form of paid, right? Because you're paying for live traffic. And as long as you know your numbers, you know that if you put $1 in the machine, $3 are going to come out of the other end. You could invest $1,000 and you're going to get 3,000 for it. So the math starts to make sense once you have all of those fundamentals in place to start putting paid. If you don't want to, and by the way, I put them in that order because that's the order you should get your house in order with. You start with strategy, then you get your own channels in place, then you start working on some earned. Once you have all that and you start doing paid traffic, it'll work out better.
I love the way you broke that down.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the order too.
Of services. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that, Josh?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the order because I was going to ask you, like, is this? I mean, obviously, when you were going through it, it sounded specific, like a specific order. But I'm glad you tapped into that because I was going to ask about that. You mentioned
it's not like a one size fits all. It's you come in, assess the situation, meet the client where they are, do an analysis, and be like, okay, now this.
Yep.
Before that.
I think on one size fits all, and we've talked about this before, but I think especially in marketing and really just business across the board, what happens is 70 to like 80% of, things within marketing are the same. And then it's that 20 to 30% that kind of is more unique for your company. So if you have that 70, 80% that you can kind of just like, hey, this is what works. Now let's tack on what makes you unique on top of that. I think that's when you start to build either one, a good marketing plan, or two, just a good business in general.
Yeah, that's right. We had that. We had another person on our show, I guess last week, and they were saying that if you tell me it's a personal injury firm, I have 80% of their marketing plan in my head. But what's interesting in what you're doing, even though you're going after the healthcare space, so you have a vertical, so you know that vertical inside and out because you've worked in it, you've provided value in it, but still it changes and it's not a one size fits all depending on where they are in their.
And I think where an agency comes into
absolutely.
And I think where agency comes into play is like you, the client, you don't have to learn that 70%. Like how many issues and mistakes are you going to make if you're trying to just catch up to that 70%? We have the 70, 80%. Now let's work with you to, again, tack on the rest of it. So, just trying to tie podcast episodes together. You mentioned you mentioned adding value. And one of the services that I saw on your website that I want to highlight because I think just newer of an idea is podcasting as a sales tool. So can you tell us a little bit more about like what the heck that is and what it looks like?
Yeah, sure. And the what we say internally is one size fails all. Because it does, right? And so the frameworks, see, as a successful agency, you have frameworks that can be applied successfully, but then you input the relevant data points to the client and what their end goals are. That's you add those data points to the frameworks and you get success at the end. So it is an algorithm. And the frameworks are an algorithm. And if you know if you know the plays, you know the motions, you could do the algorithm. You insert the right data points, you get super clear on KPIs and metrics, and then boom, you get results, right? Like 60 to 90 days, we're always getting results. So it's knowing that algorithm. But back to the podcasting question that you asked, Josh. So we actually started, like our business started as a podcast. Like I did not intend to start an agency, but guess what happened? So this year we'll hit 2,000 episodes on the Outcomes Rocket.
Amazing.
What a pleasure and privilege it has been to sort of sit down with all these amazing people, all healthcare leaders. Not only have we built an amazing network of just business leaders in the industry, organization leaders in the industry, the knowledge, and by having all these conversations, I started seeing patterns that there's huge gaps in the marketing business in healthcare, and we decided to address them. Now, one of our main business drivers is our podcast. So we use the podcast to create thought leadership content, but we also use it to meet with our ideal client personas, our ICPs, right? So our marketing programs consist of right now, right, in this year and in this quarter, we're focused on the podcast, We're focused on thought leadership, so we're putting content out on different channels, Forbes, councils. We get interviews on different platforms out there. So thought leadership's another one. Conferences are another one. But the podcasting funnel for us is one of our main business drivers. And so the mistake that most people make around podcasting is that they think about podcasting like a consumer of podcasts. And you think about a podcast as a media business. And a media business essentially gets paid for what? What do media businesses make money off of? Advertising, right? And so you get paid for advertising by growing your audience. So the reality for most business owners is that your business is not a media business. So stop trying to be that. What your business is your core business, either your service or your product that you deliver. Therefore, you should think about a podcast more like an opportunity to create thought leadership and connect with. It's a business development tool. So rather than think of the audience side of the funnel, you want to think of the guest side of the funnel. And it's a great opportunity to connect with your ideal client personas, create content, lead with value. Actually, one of our favorite stories, have you guys ever heard of the Stone Soup story?
No.
You haven't heard the Stone Soup story? Oh my God, I love that story. So I'm going to give it to you in a nutshell, okay? So there's these 3 soldiers. The war just finished, and they needed to get back home, so they had to walk all the way back home. It was miles. And they saw a little town in the distance, and they said, oh, wow, an opportunity to sleep and eat some food. Well, the villagers, they were going through some hard times. They said, hey, look, the soldiers are coming. Everybody hide your food, like close your doors. So the soldiers get to the town and nobody wants to help them out. They said, no, there was 3 soldiers before you that came, and sorry, we can't help you. So they said, all right, we're going to have to make stone soup. And when people started hearing this idea of stone soup, they got curious. So somebody comes up and they said, oh, what do you mean stone soup? That sounds like it doesn't cost much. You should show me. So they bring a big pot. And then the next person says, hey, well, you might need a little bit of salt and pepper. I could contribute that if you show me how to make this stone soup. Fast forward to the end, they're like, put carrots in it. And people start taking out tables and bringing, hey, well, soup tastes great with dumplings. By the end of the day, these soldiers basically said, hey, such wise soldiers like you guys shouldn't have anything but the best sleeping quarters. So one of them slept with at the mayor's house, another slept at the priest's house, and another one slept at one of the famous politicians' house. So these guys end up getting a beautiful send off. And what that story is all about, and we talk about it at our company, is that sometimes you got to make stone soup. And what that means is if you show up and you are asking for things, you're not leading with value, people are going to close their doors. People are going to hide their food. If you show up offering ideas and value, which is what a podcast does for you, right? You're showing up to offer, not showing up to ask. People receive you more openly. The other thing here is it's the importance of how fast great ideas catch fire. So when you have a really interesting idea and you're creating awesome content, people want to share, especially if they're part of it. So now they're your guest. Now they want to share. So the network effect of that, like it happened with this Stone Soup story, like that's what happens with your podcast. And pretty soon enough, like guys, I'll share with you the first year, it was hard for me to even get guests. But then I started getting I got some anchor guests, some very big names in the industry. And I turned that into a landing page and I de-risked it for others. So then it became bigger and bigger. And now I'm getting invited to conferences to speak, to be a panelist on things and this is all through association, right? Like success through association. So what I would share to anyone is if you're looking for a I wouldn't even call it a shortcut. I would call it a tried and true path to success. By associating with other successful people, the podcast is a great business development tool. We help people create branded podcasts that help their companies shine, that help them as leaders shine, and in the process, create those connections that will help grow the business. So that's it's a phenomenal opportunity. Obviously, I'm a believer. I'm not only the president, I'm also a client. As the hair club for men guy would say. It works great. It works great.
I think that's related to, and maybe it's directly the same, which is, you always hear when asking for an investment or something or fundraising, you hear ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money. And I think it's loosely.
I love that.
To that as well. The last question I believe that I have is, a lot of what we're trying to do with this podcast is really kind of get a community or almost a referral network between our guests, because at the end of the day, marketing agencies, even if they kind of say they're full service, there's just so many services out there that, maybe I do SEO, but I don't do events. So we're trying to we're saying like, hey, we have all these guests that we have that might fill in that gap. Is there anyone? So the question out of all of this is, how can you work with other marketing agencies, or what services can you partner with other agencies? So in other words, what do agencies tend to reach out to you for?
Yeah, I would say the two core things that a lot of folks come to us for is either account-based marketing or podcast production. Like those are sort of two things that that folks use us for. If you're looking for on the account-based marketing side, if you have average contract values of 100,000 plus, and you have, call it smaller pools of people that you need to work with, we're very good at connecting the dots, creating programs that create demand, and fill up your sales folks' schedules with opportunities. Because guess what? When you have a full schedule of sales opportunities, you actually have the breathing room as a marketer to build the brand. Because as a marketer, you want to build brand, and you also want to generate pipeline. And so if you can keep your salespeople busy with opportunities, that gives you breathing room to build brand awareness. And it's fun to be able to do both. So the ABM program helps marketers do that. And then the podcast program, which I just shared, is another one that, we're pretty well known for.
Awesome. And as we come up to the end of the episode, I just want to give you an opportunity to mention how people can find you and anything else you'd like to end with.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Look, if your company is currently doing more than $1 million in sales, or if you have raised more than $5 million in venture capital, or above that, you're a great fit for us. And I'm confident if you're in the healthcare space, because that's the niche that we're focused on exclusively, that we could help you reach your target audience and accelerate your growth. And I'd be willing to do a 20-minute strategy session with you. It's something that I'll do as long as you meet those criteria. I'll do it with you, and you'll leave with great ideas. And you either work with us or not. That's up to you. But it's something that we love to do with the qualified folks that we work with. And maybe let's just say you're not qualified. We put out a lot of content. If you go to our media page, literally when we get invited to speak to media, we give our best stuff away. So if you're not qualified, go learn from the stuff that we're putting out there, because we're putting a lot of it out there. And so if you want that, either way, go to outcomesrocket.com and you'll find a contact form there to get in touch with us.
Yeah, I wish we had more time to talk about that last thing. I think that's a really interesting topic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And for those of you who've learned something new from this episode, please consider giving us a like or a follow so we can continue getting the highest quality of guests. And as always, thank you for listening. Saul, this was a lot of fun, and honestly learned a lot on this one. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I just want to thank our sponsors, DevNoodle. DevNoodle provides marketing agencies with the ability to offer their clients unlimited website design, build, and management services with fixed monthly plans. If website design, development, and maintenance is holding your agency back from growing, please reach out to us at devnoodle.com, where we make websites easy for you and easy for your clients. devnoodle.com.